This person had every chance, every single one. They were warned in detail in the silences, on the days when just being there was a struggle, in the moments when patience was dressed in calm to avoid breaking. This person was given time. They were given care. They were given space to change, to grow, to realize what was slipping through their fingers. But they ignored it. They took it for granted. They thought nothing would change. They believed that love was a guarantee, that those who love never leave, that those who feel always wait. It was a mistake, a serious mistake, because the heart can also get tired, and no one gives a heads up with a set date when they're going to give up. This person took a long time to understand. They thought there would always be a tomorrow, that the exhaustion would pass, that the feelings would hold everything together on their own. But what holds a relationship together is not just love. It's the awareness that there's someone rare by your side and not treating them as ordinary. And when they realized it, it was already too late. That gaze was no longer the same. That voice had become drier. That desire to try no longer existed, because love didn't vanish all at once. It faded slowly. With each time they didn't listen, with each gesture they didn't appreciate, with each attempt they discarded. This person now feels. They feel the absence, they feel guilt, they feel a void that used to be filled with presence. But it doesn't help to feel this now. It doesn't help to chase after something that was ignored when it needed attention the most. The chance was wasted, not out of malice, but out of negligence. Whoever had everything lost everything, because they only understood the value when there was nothing left to hold on to. Have you ever been everything someone needed and only been noticed when you were gone? This person saw you trying, but they didn't see how much, because some people only see what they want. And you were so constant, so present, so whole, that you became part of the scenery. You were there in the good days and bad, in the details that no one notices, in the attentive listening, in the company that doesn't weigh heavy, in the patience that repeats even when the ending is already known. This person had it all. They had you completely, even when you already felt like you were breaking inside. They had your presence in moments when you didn't even want to be there. They had your affection even on days when you could hardly take care of yourself. And what did they do? They considered it normal. They thought it was an obligation. They believed love comes with a manual for submission, as if you were born to endure, to tolerate, to carry on, always. But you weren't born to be an emotional punching bag. You weren't created to beg for affection. You weren't made to live as an option. This person had warnings. They had silences that said everything. They had looks that begged for change. They had harsh words that, in reality, were desperate cries for help. But they chose to postpone, to ignore, to pretend it wasn't about them. They believed in the illusion that you would stay, even without reciprocity, even without attention, even without care, even without being seen. And now this person feels. They feel the absence that screams. They feel the echo of what they didn't want to hear. They feel the weight of a love that turned into a memory. But what hurts the most is not the absence, it's knowing that the absence was a choice. Because the pain of losing someone you love, this is natural. But the pain of losing someone who was there, who tried, who insisted, who waited, who cried in silence, who held back to avoid hurting, that pain has no consolation. This person had all the chances. They had all your versions. They had you before the disappointment. They had you when you still believed. And when you believed, you were a giant. You exceeded expectations. You gave more than you received. You protected even from yourself. But no one can be whole for two. No one can keep giving without return. No one can survive emotional abandonment disguised as companionship. This person had time but wasted it. They had love but misused it. They had you but didn't know how to cherish it. And now they want to come back. They want to fix things. They want to say what they didn't say before. You want to hear what you used to ignore. But you are not a place for return. You are not an automatic second chance. You are not a remedy for a delayed conscience. You are someone who has learned through pain, through waiting, in silence. You realize that presence isn't everything, that insistence doesn't save a relationship, that love doesn't compensate for neglect. Now it's you who decides. You who chooses who enters. You who protects what you feel. You who limits access. Because those who didn't value what they had don't deserve an easy way back. This person will say they've changed, that they understand, that they miss you, that they didn't know how to act, that they need one more chance, but you will look deeply into their eyes, and you will remember. You will remember how many times you begged for attention without words, how many nights you waited for this person to notice what was happening, how many pieces of yourself were left along the way, and it will hurt, but it will pass. Because what hurts now, that will turn into strength tomorrow. You didn't lose, you saved yourself. The one who lost was this person, because they had all the chances, and only realized after there was nothing left to hold on to. And do you know what hurts them now? It's not just your absence. It's realizing they had everything and treated it like it was nothing. This person had you in a rare moment of their life, when the heart still believed, when you still thought that giving your best was enough, that being loyal, present, and consistent was sufficient for someone to choose you with the same weight. But now you see, not everyone understands what they have in their hands. Not everyone is ready to receive what is genuine. And when they're not, they destroy. Even without meaning to, this person wasn't cruel, they were unconscious, but that doesn't make the wound any smaller. You also tried to convince yourself of that, didn't you? Tried to justify the lack of care with past traumas. Tried to understand the flaws as distractions. Tried to accept that the other loved in their own way. But deep down, you knew. You felt the disconnect. You saw that you were alone in effort, alone in intention, alone in trying. And the most painful part? It's that even seeing this, you stayed. You waited for something that may have never truly existed. You believed in promises that were never fulfilled. You held the relationship on your shoulders, as if loving meant carrying everything even while bleeding. And this person? Moved on as if nothing was happening, as if your exhaustion was an exaggeration, as if your fatigue was drama. But you weren't being dramatic, you were begging for reciprocity, without shouting, without demanding, without insisting. You just wanted to be seen. And now when you're no longer there, this person begins to see. See that you weren't demanding, you were sensitive, that you weren't needy, you were deep, that you weren't hard to please. You were specific in what you gave, and needed at least the bare minimum in return. But now it's too late, because what was destroyed carelessly cannot be rebuilt. This person misses you, but what they feel isn't just nostalgia. It's the absence of something they never learned to protect. You don't come back the same, and even if you tried, a part of you no longer wants to. Doesn't want to beg anymore, doesn't want to teach the obvious, doesn't want to explain the value that was already clear from the start. This person sees it now. But late realization doesn't rebuild trust, doesn't heal wounds, doesn't restore commitment. You've crossed the point of no return, not out of malice, but because you finally understood that staying there would be betraying yourself. And you have betrayed yourself enough for love. You've belittled yourself, you've stayed silent, you've accepted crumbs. Now you choose peace, even if it still hurts, even if it's still missing, because it's better to deal with the pain of absence than with the weight of an unbalanced love. This person had everything and lost everything for immaturity, for neglect, for believing that you wouldn't leave. But you left, not because you stopped loving, but because you chose to love yourself more, and that nobody can take away from you. This person tried to come back. She tried to reopen conversations, rebuild bridges, revive promises. She sent long messages, she said she changed, she cried, but you felt it. The change wasn't hers, it was yours. What changed was your perception, because now you see clearly what once confused you. You weren't hard to love. You were just in the wrong place, trying to make it work on your own. This person never understood what your presence cost, what you sacrificed inside to keep going, how painful it was to be the only one carrying the us. But now the us has turned into I was. It's turned into a memory. It's turned into a lesson learned. You realized you can't make someone love you the way you want. You can't teach presence. There's no way to force emotional maturity in someone who still lives in denial. This person needed to lose to see, and now they live in a desperate attempt to turn back time. But you don't live there anymore, because while they seek to reclaim what they destroyed, you're rebuilding what's left of you. And it hurts. Of course it hurts. It hurts to remember the plans. It hurts to remember how you believed. It hurts to think it could have been different. But you've learned that love can't be begged for. That attention can't be demanded. That presence can't be forced. You've become what you've always been, a priority, for yourself. And this person, who saw you leaving in silence, thought it was just another crisis. They thought you would come back, like you always did. But you didn't return, because now your love is too whole to go back to where it was ignored. They had all the chances, but they treated it like you would always stay. And now they're living with the choices they made, because the absence isn't yours, it's theirs. Theirs with themselves, with everything they failed to see, with everything they didn't want to feel, with everything they didn't have the courage to value while they could. This person will carry that for a long time. This isn't regret. It's delayed clarity, and you keep going. With scars, yes, but also with a greater awareness. You're not hard to love. You're deep. And those who don't know how to swim, drown. This person never understood how privileged they were to be chosen by you. Because being chosen by you isn't just about being nearby, it's about being cared for in silence. It's about being defended even when they don't deserve it. It's receiving a kind of love that doesn't shout, but supports. And now that it's all over, this person is trying to convince themselves that it was a misunderstanding. They try to justify what was pure abandonment with ready-made phrases from someone who still doesn't have the courage to admit they messed up badly. But you know, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was emotional neglect. It was the choice to focus on themselves rather than on you. To live in a relationship as if they were alone, as if your pain were an exaggeration, as if your needs were burdensome, and that's what still hurts today. Because you lost yourself, you adapted, you gave in more than you should have. You did this thinking that someday you would be seen, but the only thing that happened was you losing yourself. This person watched from the sidelines as you drained away. They knew, they felt, they saw the exhaustion in your body, and yet chose to do nothing. Now they're chasing after you, with speeches that try to sound profound, with truths that only came when you were already gone. But love doesn't return out of remorse. And what you've built within yourself now doesn't fit into the same story anymore. You've become another person, after they didn't hold on to you, after you had to let go. And the cruelest part is that you still think, you still feel, you still dream of what could have been. But even with this lingering sadness, you won't go back, because you learned the difference between love and dependence, between persistence and reciprocity. This person will still try, they will show up, they will make themselves present like never before, but you won't forget. You won't forget the day you cried in silence next to someone who pretended not to notice. You won't forget how much you had to swallow to maintain something that was already crumbling. You won't forget the loneliness of sharing your life with someone who wouldn't share their soul. And that's why it doesn't open up the same way anymore. It doesn't give in as easily anymore. It doesn't believe as quickly anymore. You've become a barrier after having been a bridge because you got tired of being a passage, and anyone who wants to stay now will have to build together, with presence, with commitment, with honesty. And this person knows that they've lost the best part of you, not because you were perfect, but because you were sincere. You were real. And today being real, this scares those who live on emotional appearances. This person had every chance, every single one. They had all of you. Before the disappointment, before the exhaustion, before the closing off, you gave everything you could, gave attention when you weren't receiving any, gave patience when you had none, gave love even when silence was the only response. This person didn't make mistakes for lack of warning. They erred by choice, by ego, by complacency, by thinking you would never leave. Because when your presence becomes routine, those who lack maturity start to think they no longer need to earn it. But you are not a routine. You are someone who feels deeply, who perceives beyond the surface, who loves in a rare way, the kind of love that doesn't ask for attention but bleeds when ignored. This person had time, had space, had every possible sign, But they confused your commitment with submission, confused your consistency with weakness, confused your hope with naivety. And now? Now they want to come back. With promises, with pretty words, with overdue truths. But you're not the same anymore. You don't want that anymore. Because you've realized that sometimes losing someone is regaining yourself. This person didn't lose you suddenly. They lost you little by little. In every word you swallowed, in every night you waited, in every attempt that fell into the void. And now they live with this absence, with this lack, with this emptiness that can no longer be filled with speeches. Because where there was no presence, there can be no return. You deserve conscious love, present, reciprocal, not emotional crumbs disguised as late efforts. If this video resonated with you, comment down below. I needed to hear this. Tell me, have you ever been everything to someone, and that person only realized it after they lost you? Your story can help someone who is going through the same situation right now. Leave a like if this video touched on something that still burns within you. Share it with someone who needs to reflect on what they still have. And if you want more truths like this, subscribe to the channel. Here we don't pretend we don't feel, because some people only understand after it's too late. But you now have understood, and you won't go back.